for this session, and I'll do my very best to bring out a fantastic conversation about innovation in corporate volunteering. Just want you to know that I come from Darug country in New South Wales, and above all my corporate duties and other things, I am a woman, a mother, a sister, a wife. I have 2 dogs, so I guess I'm a mother to 2 dogs. I'm a person, and I happen to work for an amazing company called Pfizer. And some of you might have heard about Pfizer in the last 12 to 18 months. We make some medicines. And before I get into housekeeping, I know housekeeping is really important. It's important we know where to go to the toilet and how to exit the building if there's a fire. But as part of our reconciliation action plan at Pfizer, it is really customary and important to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land. And this morning in the session that I was in, there was the most wonderful acknowledgement that I'm not going to try to create, because it was very, very special, putting our feet on the ground and inhaling and exhaling and connecting with the land. But I do want to acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land, the Ngunnawal people, and I do pay my respects to their elders, past and present. And it's really interesting to me that the Ngunnawal language is virtually extinct now. I'm not sure if you know that. There are no fluent speakers of Ngunnawal language. It has been stolen. But the Ngunnawal people are working very, very hard to bring that language back to country. I just want you to think about that for a minute. Their language has been stolen. And so what else has been stolen from these people? So we thank them for their unique connection to country and culture, and for continuing to strive to bring that alive today. The other thing that I would like to say, just from a personal perspective, you can't come to Canberra without remembering and realising that this is the places where our laws are made. And I'd really like to uphold that my personal view is that I am very much awaiting the movement towards voice, treaty and truth in our land of lawmaking. So as I said, I'm Leigh Simmonds. I'm Senior Manager of Patient Advocacy, Corporate Social Responsibility and Reconciliation at Pfizer Australia. It is my absolute great privilege and honour to be here with you in this room and online, and we thank you so much for joining us. Unfortunately, for those online, you're not going to be able to ask questions today, and I really do sincerely apologise for that. However, I have checked with the team here, and I personally am very happy with you to reach out via LinkedIn to send us messages or questions, and we'd be more than happy to get back to you in answering some of those questions that arise out of the session today. All right, innovation in corporate volunteering. It almost sounds like an oxymoron, doesn't it? How can you be innovative in corporate volunteering? But innovation is defined as the process of innovating a new method, idea, product. In other words, inventing or evolving something. And there is an inference that it's to meet a need, right, large or small. Some say, have you heard of this? Necessity is the mother of invention. Necessity's been getting a work out, and boy, there's been a lot of mother of invention. And in corporate volunteering, particularly over the last couple of years, where face-to-face became something that was not considered to be safe, but yet the need was so great, there was a lot of tension throughout corporate Australia around wanting to be able to contribute in some way, but literally having their hands tied behind their back because it was not considered safe to go outside the building. I experienced that tension myself and tried advocating within Pfizer to really stretch the limits and the boundaries on what we were able to do. And we were successful to some degree. We were able to participate in giving blood still because of the highly regulated environment that created, which was fantastic. But it did create a lot of room for innovation. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that later, and you can ask me any questions about what we've been doing at Pfizer. But without further ado, I'd like to introduce our panellists who are going to share some of their thoughts, ideas, and how innovation is showing up in their world in corporate volunteering. So I have with me Traci Gamblin, who is Executive Manager of Engagement in Volunteering WA. Welcome, Traci. Round of applause, yes. Ash Rosshandler, he's the Chief Executive Officer of Good Company. And Liz Mackinlay, CEO of Australian Business Volunteers. Between us, we have some 50-something years of experience, which is somewhat embarrassing. But if you want to know more about our profiles and all of the rest of our dogs' names and other matters as well, are in the speaker notes, and you can connect with us that way as well. So up you come, Traci. Come on. Oh, and no, you wanted me to ask. We have a show of hands. Who in the room comes here from community, and who here would say they come from corporate? Could we have a community hands up, please? Okay, that's quite a large number. And hands down. And corporate, any corporates? Oh, that's exciting. 2 hands from the front here. That means we're twice as corporate. He happens to be a Pfizer colleague, so that and of course, there's probably many corporate folks on the line who are juggling a multitude of things right now, and I hope this conversation is stimulating enough for you to stop doing something else that you are doing. Okay, Traci, come on over. 5 minutes you have.
Okay, wait, that's not 5 minutes yet. Yeah, until I press this. Okay. Great, so I'm here from Whadjuk country, the Noongar Nation, so I'm a bit jet lagged actually. So I might not speak clearly. I'm calling mine an under-tapped community resource, so it's not a typo. So we are tapping into corporate volunteering, but it's still under-tapped. So I'm just going to show you the issue here. Is this going to move, or do I have to do this? Right. Oh, now I'm wet. Let's try again. Okay. So here's the challenge. We've got a situation. You're going to hear it throughout the conference. The volunteering rate is declining, and it is not because of COVID. It was declining before, but COVID exacerbated the situation. So, okay. But we definitely have an opportunity. So we've got to do something to reverse this decline. So we need to reach out to these under-tapped resources to be part of the solution. So studies tell us, and we'll hear this throughout the conference, that if someone is exposed to positive volunteering experience, they'll go on to volunteer in the future. So with millions of people spending the day at work, like let's grab these people and get them involved. So I'm from Volunteering WA. We're the peak body for volunteering in Western Australia. I'm going quickly because I only have 5 minutes. But the most important thing for you to know about Volunteering WA is we are a charity. We're a not-for-profit organization, and we work with community organizations. And that is crucial for our corporate program. So we started corporate volunteering in 2010. And the sort of innovative side of things is that we know the community really well. Is this doing it? It's honestly going itself now. So that is the crucial sort of key to our program, is that we've got many stakeholders in the sort of volunteering ecosystem. We've got corporate volunteers, we're Volunteering WA, we've got community organizations, and most importantly, community. So the key for our program is that we were trying to sort of bridge the gap between what the community really needed and what the corporate volunteers wanted to give. And believe me, there was a real gap in not knowledge, but just awareness of, you know, we need help, we want to help, but they often just didn't, they kind of like cross like this. And so we became that intermediary really out of necessity, as Leigh was talking about before. I actually can't see the time, just so you know. Okay, so the innovation in our program is that we listen to community. Oh, someone's alarmed. That is not my time yet. To understand what their needs are, and we will, in some cases, talk to the corporate organization and say no, that activity isn't possible because it's simply not needed. Or, you know, it needs to be 4 hours, not 2 hours. We need this number of volunteers. So the most important aspect that we find in terms of, my slides went away, is to actually have that understanding, understand what's needed, listen. We listen to what the community is telling us. They are at the center of everything we do. And then we are able to share that with the corporate sector and say, well, listen, this is what's really needed. If you want to really contribute meaningfully to the community, this is what we firmly believe is needed. So to all the community organizations out there, keep that in mind and be honest about your needs. I'm just going to show you just a few little, I'm going to go quickly because I have 42 seconds. Just some people in action, and you'll get these slides after, so just go quickly through. Community organizations, are you reading them or it's too fast? It's too fast, yeah. Okay. So I'll just, I'm finishing off with a message. I have 7 seconds. The message to the sector is to tap into the enthusiasm of employee volunteers because they are available and they are keen. And even through COVID, WA had a different experience, but they were still very keen. How can we help? How can we get involved? There were some, you know, interruptions, but we managed to get through it. Don't be afraid to be honest with them. They want to help and they want to help in a meaningful way. So tell them what is needed, very important. And we truly believe that the system works best when the community is at the center of the program. And my final thoughts is, you know, just on innovation. So that's a quote from, actually, he was the guy who invented MTV, that innovation comes from taking two things that exist already, putting them together in a new way. So when you look at corporate community, just look at it in a different way and see how you can best make a difference. So that's my 5 minutes, but we're having a discussion after, so thank you.
Thanks, Traci. And Liz, no, yes, Liz, come on up.
Brilliant. Excellent. Fabulous to be here today. And thank you to Leigh for facilitating this panel. When I was thinking about innovation in corporate volunteering, Australian Business Volunteers, we've been around for over 40 years. We've been partnering with corporates for over 16 years. We used to run IBM's Corporate Service Corps model across Asia Pacific. And about 5 years ago, we decided that we would deeply partner with corporates. And the reason being, I've been in not-for-profits for 25 years. I've been in international development for 30 years and Indigenous development. And where I saw the gap was that corporate Australia, corporate in the Pacific, has this enormous amount of resources and an emerging and ever increasing desire to do good in the world. The community sector, which I firmly believe I'm part of, desperately needs extra support. And the way that we talk about it in ABV is we say we put the community, the not-for-profit, at the heart of the matter. So that's the head and the heart, the head being the vision, the heart being the passion. But actually we need some arms and legs to kind of make it work a bit better. And so I look at this treasure trove of corporate, of fabulous people that have got incredible skills, that if we could unlock them, that can come around these ideas and the passion that the community sector has. So that's what we've been doing. 2018, 2019, we doubled down on that strategy. We didn't have any government funding. We didn't have any philanthropy funding. It was solely partnership with corporate. It was going really well, going across the Pacific, working with the largest bank in the Pacific, working with one of the big 4 banks, Australia's largest gold miner. It was going well. March 18, everybody rang me and in 2020 and said, your contracts are suspended because COVID's just happened. We're going to come back, but we don't know when. And it gave us a really incredible opportunity to innovate and to think. We had been designing these beautiful face-to-face experiences where corporate people could come in and do the business plan and do some business mentoring and work out how to really fix tricky problems for not-for-profit and community. And all of a sudden we couldn't do that. I couldn't put people on planes. I couldn't put people in community. But we pivoted to online, and because we had a deeply respectful relationship with our corporate partners, they were willing to trust us. And so that's how we restarted our programs in late 2020 through 21, 22. Everything was either online or hybrid. And now what we have is a beautiful model where people can be face-to-face doing this great work of using their transferable skills and then doing remote mentoring. We also built a program in supporting disaster recovery and response here in Australia immediately post the Black Summer bushfires. And to be honest, those disaster affected communities didn't want anyone visiting. They didn't have accommodation. They didn't have food. They didn't have any amenities for this cohort of volunteers to come in. Nor did they have the capacity to manage those volunteers because they're absolutely knackered. They themselves had experienced catastrophic disasters. They were exhausted. So ABV took our intermediary status and came alongside those communities and said, what do you need? We're not going to tell you what you need. You tell us what you want to do, and I'll go out and find a bucket load of corporate volunteers and we'll manage them online for you. And in doing so, we've uncovered this amazing collaborative co-design between community, between corporate, in a flexible way that you can do a 2-hour assignment over 3 weeks, or you can be working with the community for 3 months. We then translated that into the Pacific because prior to COVID, you couldn't work in the Pacific unless you were face-to-face. It's just, that's how things work in the Pacific. And then we had to pivot. So for me, the innovation in corporate volunteering is getting rid of this dichotomy of here's corporate and here's community. Everybody that works in a corporate lives in a community. Everybody that is in community is connected to a corporate. And so if we have intermediaries or if we have pathways, like we were saying earlier, like the innovation group before us was saying, then we can actually say that doesn't exist anymore. And to be a complete nerd, if you go back to Adam Smith, who was a 17th century economist, who everybody quotes as designing free markets, which he did, The Wealth of Nations, and he talks about letting free markets be free markets. But he also wrote a thesis 3 years earlier about a good society and about moral people building a good society. And you have to read both together. So when I go to a corporate, I talk about that and say free markets and a good society, these things actually need to be seen together. And I think the opportunity now, the sky's the limit. So thank you for 5 minutes. And yes, it is quick.
Ash, your turn. I'll warm your seat now.
Okay, so this morning I overheard 3 volunteer managers at breakfast. The first one said, our charity runs off the smell of an oily rag. Second one says, oh, well, our charity runs off the smell of an oily rag. The third volunteer manager says, what, you've got a rag? And really, you know, it's funny, but it's not a joke, right? And that's why Good Company exists. We exist to have a platform where all charities can list their volunteer opportunities for free, and then we work our tails off to try and connect you up with corporates So we work with Optus and Medibank and MyOb and Mirvac and NBN, and that is our job, to connect those that can give with those in need to bring out the best in everyone. And what's really fascinating, we've been on this journey for like 20 years, but the cool thing is, in the old days, those that could give were the corporates and those that were in need were the charities. And now it flips, which is really exciting, right? Those that are in need of the corporates, they want purpose, they want meaning, they want experience, they want team building. And those that can give you know, the 80% of you in the room today, the charities. So we're really excited to be working in that space between the two. And we've just got a few minutes here to talk about innovation. So our tagline at Good Company is giving solutions. So that's really baked into everything that we do. So 5 quick examples. One are volunteer templates. So the solution there is we'd speak to a whole lot of great charities like you guys, and we'd say, you can find skill volunteers, you can find team volunteers, you can find accountants or lawyers, blah, blah, blah. And then we'd go back to our office, we'd look at the screen and we're like, hang on, where are all the roles? Like, everyone looked really excited about it. So what we quickly found is the problem was that, you know, charities don't have the resources, don't have the time. So we created volunteer templates. So instead of it taking 6 hours to write a position description about a board member you need, it takes about 6 seconds. You go onto the site, you go, I need a board member, pre-fills a PD, you chop and change it a little bit, you put it online, done. It's out there amongst, you know, 100,000 plus corporates. You can hold your applause to the end, okay? All right, next one, the Unified Giving Platform. So we were the first in the country to deliver that. The really exciting thing there is to unlock the nexus between donors and volunteers. So the studies are 2/3 of volunteers donate, and when they do, they give twice the amount. So we all know in this room that volunteers are awesome, but you know, what puts the fuel in the tank at the end of the day are dollars for your charity. So that's our job too, to unlock that nexus. And we're coming up with all sorts of cool tools. So if someone volunteers from, you know, Medibank, who will match dollar for dollar, they can volunteer at your charity, and almost like an Uber trip at the end, you go, oh, great, you volunteered. Now would you like to donate $5 each pay? Bang. So we're going to unlock that nexus for the charities, for the corporates, and keep working at that. The third innovation, which is pretty cool, is a Good Company volunteer mystery bus. Ooh, what's the mystery? So that, again, it's all innovations like solving a problem. So what's the problem? The problem is, on the corporate side, they want to do team building post-COVID, get people back in the office, get relationships building, get them all out volunteering, but it's always the same thing, like, where are we going? How do we get there? How do we get back? What are they going to eat? Have they done it before? Is there a charge? Like, just bag of no's, right? No, no, maybe no. And then some committee to tee it up and what date and blah. Anyway, headaches. Then on the charity side, you guys are getting the calls and, oh, it's a team of 7. It's a team of 9. Can you take 20? Can you take 11? Oh, there's a fee involved, okay, and what about your certificate of currency and all that sort of stuff? So there's so many dramas on both sides of the equation. So we leant in, and like a good innovator, we looked at the Qantas mystery flights from years ago and went, oh, let's think about that and hold on to that. And a decade later, Good Company mystery bus, we rock up to the corporate, 10 people get on board, we talk about going to the area of greatest need. What does that mean to people? Where's the area of greatest need? Why? What's your experience? What do you care about? And people are sharing all these great experiences on the bus, and then we take them to the charity. The charity gets $1,000, bang, done. They get a great experience. We do feedback, and the net promoter score off the back of that has been 95, which is insane. If any of you don't know the net promoter score, we can talk about that later. And I'm really out of time. So yes, there's 2 other innovations, but maybe we can chat about it later. Thank you.
Thank you for keeping to time. I think you've all got an opportunity to share some of those with some of the questions that we ask, so that's okay. Keep those up your sleeve. Glasses best on the face rather than used as a headband. Right, so I'm going to ask the panel some questions and then we're going to open up to the floor. Does it sound like a plan? Yes, yes. Okay, so I think I was going to ask the first question to you, Tracy, is that right?
No, but you can.
Okay, sure. Oh no, that's right. It was to Liz. Sorry, Liz.
Okay,
Yes,
Great.
yes. I'm so organised. We talk about necessity, so we talk about need. How is it best to determine the need innovation? Throw that in there somewhere too. How is it best to determine the need in the corporate volunteer setting?
So I think we've all got. Can people hear and see me?
Stand up.
I shall stand up.
Interpretive Dan.
Okay, so from our perspective, I think it is all about a trusted dialogue. So both Ash and Tracy have talked about it, that you've got to have a relationship with the corporate partner where you can talk to them about what is it you're actually trying to achieve? What is it you're trying to achieve? And be honest about that. Is it actually a great experience for your staff? Is it transformational work at a community level? Is it needing to get net promoter scores or to retain your staff? If you can't have that discussion, you're going to end up with a corporate partner that's not engaged in what you're trying to provide. And the flip side is true as well. If you can't have a good and open conversation with the community partner at a strategic level, you're going to end up with a bit of a Mickey Mouse program. So often we will have a community partner say, oh, could they help with payroll? And I go, well, they could, but they're one of the big 4 banks in Australia. Let's think bigger than that. They go, oh, could they help us devise a 5-year sustainable fundraising plan? And I go, yeah, there's the money. That's what you should be doing. So don't be afraid to think big, I think. And I love Ash's example. Think big, think outside the box, because corporate Australia is screaming out for it and the community sector absolutely needs the resources.
Yeah, great answer. I know at Pfizer, one of the ways we determine the need on a couple of different levels. So we work on the sustainability development goals, and we have a purpose-led and values-based program. So one of the things that might be a tip, if you are working with corporates, check out their website and check out what they state their purpose is, and check out what their values are, and work that into your proposals. So to help to meet their corporate objectives through the work that you do will help them sell that program internally and then release funds and people towards those causes. It certainly works.
Leigh, can I just quickly add?
Yeah.
Also look at their talent framework, because if you're talking about people, you're talking about their people. So if you want their people to be the best of their people, work out what that corporate is investing in their talent and align your opportunity with that.
How do you do that, Liz?
Well, you have to have a conversation with people and culture as part of the conversation, but many of our corporate partners have leading through ambiguity as a key talent objective, which, I mean, we all needed to learn the last 3 years. So if you're designing an experience, then how do you embed that principle in your program?
That's something as well.
Yeah.
We found it's also really important to ask the company, so whoever our representative is, so there's usually a social investment manager or someone like that, to ask them what their communications plan is, to actually communicate with all employees about the program. So because you don't want just the one person to know the purpose of the program and what it's all about, but to actually communicate that throughout the business. And that's a big ask for some of the big companies.
Yeah. Okay, so how do you know when the corporate volunteering program or innovation is actually meeting the need? I think I'll toss this one over to you, Ash.
Yeah, and I think this all relates back to what we've just been discussing is that thing of, you know, really listening both to the corporate and the charity. And, you know, let's face it, there's a lot of headwinds coming up. So there's nothing more schizophrenic than a company saying, you know, we've got to lay off 10% of staff, and by the way, have you all done your volunteer leave? Like, that's, you know, just not going to happen. So really listening to what their needs are and meeting a need. So one of the other things we've been really fortunate to innovate on recently is one of the needs from corporates is immersive volunteering. So I really want to go deep immersive volunteering, also with a voice this year, also with their reconciliation action plan. It's kind of like, okay, we've got a plan now, how do we put some concrete steps towards reaching that plan? So that's the sort of, you know, issue that we had from the corporate. And then one of the issues from the Yothu Yindi Foundation on their Gama Festival was that they've been running it for a long time. This year's going to be especially big, but sometimes they've got volunteers who rock up to this festival who think that it's like the Byron Bay Blues Festival, and they're there to dance and party, and the reality is they're there to put up like 3,500 tents in soaring heat, put them up, bring them down, and it's more like, you know, Survivor than Big Brother. So we're really lucky in that we've become the volunteer partner for that. We have to find 100 corporate volunteers to go up from the 29th of July all the way to the 9th of August. It's 11 days, but it's going to be absolutely incredible. So if there are any corporates in the room who want to talk to us about that, we're looking for teams. They have to pay for their airfare, which is all the way to Gove, which is East Arnhem Land. But they get free accommodation, festival tickets, and hopefully the experience of a lifetime.
Wonderful, thank you. Now you're just touching on something there, and given that, you know, sort of 3/4 of the room is volunteering involving organisations, hope you don't mind me being just a little bit provocative. Tell me just some of your thoughts, maybe reflections or, you know, futurist notions around corporations paying for volunteering experiences. Tracy?
Sure. That wasn't on the. No, I'm kidding.
No, sorry, it wasn't.
Interesting. So they're not paying for the experiences. That's not how. You know, I would see it. I know what you're saying though, just to be provocative. But so when we organize a volunteering experience, there's sort of some project management sort of work behind that. So all the liaising and things like that to make sure it's organized, people register, we organize catering, transport, etc. Okay, so there's a cost to that that companies are more than willing to pay so that they don't have to pay an employee to do that work. But we also make sure that there's a budget line for the volunteer involving organization. They would be out of pocket otherwise. They are hosting an activity at their organization. It takes them time. It takes them sometimes materials and resources. They might have to buy mulch or plants or whatever. So we make sure that they are, you know, compensated for that. So they're not being paid necessarily, but there is some sort of compensation for their time, effort, and materials. So that is, we make that very clear from the get-go that, you know, this is something that costs organizations to host, and companies are more than willing to pay for that. So they're not paying for the experience. We say to companies, you know, anyone can go online for free and find any volunteer opportunity they want. That's available, that's easy. It's the project management on top of that. And then also it takes a lot of time and effort for the community organization to have, you know, particularly with groups, you know, there's a real effort there in having a group. Some volunteer involving organizations do use it as a bit of a fundraising opportunity. They might kind of mark up a little bit just to make some money there, but they're also very clear about that. And companies, if they see that and know that, you know, you're paying, you know, helping with the cause, that's also quite acceptable.
Yeah. Ash, I can see you're burning.
Yeah, just adding to that, you know, absolutely we've seen a growth in charities asking for funds for the volunteering, and so you should, right? Because they're either going to go to the pub and spend money, or they're going to go rock climbing, or they're going to do something else, and you're giving them the experience of a lifetime. So definitely, you know, charge them. And I think Good Company is the only volunteer platform on earth where one of the filters on the platform is how much does it cost the corporate to go volunteer there. So we're supportive of it.
Yeah, so you'll see in the launch of the national strategy, of which I was chair of the corporate volunteering group, on page 17, and one of the key concepts, it speaks to volunteering being sustainable and not being at anybody's disadvantage. And so it is very important. Corporates pay for every other thing in their universe. They should, in my humble opinion, also pay to participate in volunteering. Questions from the floor? If we could have hands up, and we'll chase you down with microphones. So I have a lady in a green dress over here. Thank you.
Hi everyone. If anyone knows me, my question is a little provocative, and I'm not going to say sorry, but it is a question that invites you all into a conversation that I think is really important one to have between corporate partners and community organisations. I work, as some of you know, for Brotherhood of St Lawrence. So our mission is to alleviate and eradicate poverty, and we work with who some people call, you know, those who experience the most disadvantage. I often say are often the most under-prioritised people in our community. I love that you touched on the strategy. There are 3 other points in that strategy that I think are really important, which are around understanding the colonial history of traditional volunteering and making sure that we're taking into account different perceptions of giving and volunteering in communities. There is a systemic shift around making sure that volunteering is accessible. And I've forgotten my 3rd one, which was around refocusing the volunteer experience. And my question is, and it's something that came up in a conversation with a colleague that I would love to open the conversation up about, and that is corporate volunteering displacing opportunities from those who would most benefit from volunteering, such as those who would use volunteering as a pathway to employment, to gain skills, to make new connections in a community that they've just become a part of. And I completely understand your perspectives, and I think they are entirely valid, but they come from the corporate perspective. And I would love to hear your thoughts on what are some innovations that we can inject into the corporate volunteering model that recognise and invite those who would benefit more from volunteering than people who are in paid positions.
Oh, wow, that is a big question. Anyone want to have a go? Okay,
yeah,
Liz.
I'd like to have a go. I think it's a great question. And so let me give you our experience of working in disaster recovery in southern New South Wales and northeast Victoria. We saw a gap. We actually saw that communities were seriously struggling. We have international experience in disaster recovery, and so I've got all the kind of frameworks and models. I went to a number of corporate partners and said, would you fund us to go down there? And they said, absolutely. I said, would you provide some volunteers? They said, absolutely. But when we got down there, what we've ended up seeing is that probably, I would say 15% of the volunteer roles we ended up managing, which is over hundreds and hundreds over the last 2 years, were filled by the corporate staff. It's actually, when we got there, it was talking with somebody in community, talking with the local Aboriginal Land Council, talking with people up the road that wanted to come down and help. And so we've been able to be funded by corporate, ostensibly under their corporate volunteering program, but they said, we don't mind who picks up the piece of work. Because I think inclusion is at the heart of what we do. We are committed to the Sustainable Development Goals. We are subject to the ACNC external conduct standards, which means we are gender and disability inclusive. We are adaptive of climate change. So I think it's about your relationship with the corporate partner, right? If you can say to them, listen, this isn't just a great experience for your staff. We are together going to do something profound in community. your staff will get opportunity to do something, but actually we're going to invite a whole range of other people into this, and we manage them as a collective team. So the corporate staff member gets to meet Aboriginal people who have cultural burning practices, people that have lost their houses but want to volunteer in the community. And it's a principle that we're trying to now embed in all of our corporate volunteering. And I think this is why that's a great question, that we can actually hold that intention.
Can I just add to that? Quite an interesting example. So one of our corporate clients, their CSR manager, again, it's kind of listening deeply to their needs, and they had this need where they've got a lot of programmers from Pakistan and India and Iran and things like that that come to Australia and work for their company. Invariably, it's men, and the wives are left at home. So you can imagine the displacement, right? They're back in their country of birth. They've got their grandmother and their mother and their kids and family and everything else, and then all of a sudden they're in, West Sydney by themselves, all alone. And sadly, that led, to one of these women taking their life in front of a train, right? Horrible. So the brief to us was, would you do a corporate volunteering platform for our staff, but would you also allow their partners access to the platform so that they can integrate into the community, they can get the benefits, they're not left behind. So I think there are really great, innovations, again, where we can try and solve for both.
Yeah, I think it would be a really sad day, and I don't think it's something that corporates would ever be striving for, would be to displace other people in the community from benefiting from volunteering. And I think it's a really great question, and thank you so much for raising it, because we can start to think about that in the framework of best practice volunteering. One of the things we're going to do, the working group is going to develop a guideline, a best practice and a how-to guide. And we have actually been thinking at Pfizer about how we sponsor other students or other people to participate in volunteering as well. Not quite sure where to start, but that doesn't mean we can't have a go. But thank you so much, really wonderful question. There was another question down the front here, thank you.
Hi, I come from Meals on Wheels, so we have a very short span of volunteering opportunity. And I find that a lot of times when we are approached by a corporate to undertake volunteering, they want to do it as a team building exercise. There's 20 or 30 of us. Most of our member services wouldn't even have 20 or 30 volunteering opportunities on any one given day. And to the last question, we don't want to displace our current volunteers to provide that opportunity for a corporate. So my question is, how do we encourage that short, more regular volunteering in the corporate volunteering sector rather than the one-off event?
Great question. That's a tough one because, just be honest about what the needs are. It could be that there might be a small group that could go out during that day. So there might be a shift of an hour. They could meet for a coffee and then go out and do their volunteering and then come back together. So there are ways that you can go that way. But just be really honest that that's just not, it's not possible to do it as a group of 20.
Yeah, I think there's, I observe our organisation and I see that there's a bundle of people who are happy to go out and volunteer on their own. They don't need anyone holding their hand. And then there's another group that almost can't volunteer without someone by their side and they have to be, part of a group. And I think that's just the nature of community. We all, operate a little bit differently. So it's tapping into those who do want to do and are able to do individual and pushing back on the ones who can't. I think that's right.
You also, you might think about, is there an opportunity to do some sort of introductory group activity to show them what your organization is all about? They can learn what the needs are, et cetera, and then they might be enticed to come on their own and volunteer, which does happen. I was going to say before, sorry, I am short, so you can't see me. Oh, hello, look at all these people back there. I was thinking about the the question before about displacing volunteers. We, as the volunteering peak body, we obviously run other programs, pathways to employment programs for volunteering as well. But it is crucial to introduce the corporate sector to volunteering. We had someone who was, an executive vice president who volunteered. Maybe she's watching, I don't know, for Dress for Success, and then wound up actually leaving her company, going back to volunteer with Dress for Success. And I brought a corporate team the other day, and she was running the session. It was fantastic. And then she's actually working alongside now very vulnerable people, helping them, find clothing for job interviews and things like that. So fantastic to have had her have that experience and then go on to volunteer in the community, which is really one of the main, benefits of a corporate volunteering program. Yeah.
Thank you. Question in the front here. Yes, sorry.
Thank you. Hi, Olivia from Sydney Children's Hospitals Foundation. I just thought, I know this isn't a brainstorming session, but in case anyone else had the same question as yourself on Meals on Wheels and how to, I guess, take in those inquiries for corporates that have 20 people. Maybe you could even suggest to the corporate that, hey, this is, I guess, our schedule. This is how many people can fit into one corporate volunteering session. Start a program within your company to sponsor staff members, probably 5 a month or however you require. And then they can do a turnover of that 20 staff members that they want to sponsor. And then they can tally up their corporate volunteering hours with yourself and have a long-term program. Just a suggestion I wanted to throw out there.
Great suggestion.
That's great. Breaking it up and sharing the yes, that doesn't solve for this notion that people want to volunteer as a team, but I guess it's just fit for purpose, isn't it? Yes, the gentleman down the front here. Sorry, making you run around quite a lot, sorry. Oh, there are. Yes, sorry. I can't see that far. Next one's coming from the back. Be ready. Whose hand's ready?
Thanks. So my name is Matt Chesney. I'm from the Minaroo Foundation. And one of the issues that we are facing in the disaster resilience space, and I'm not going to say recovery because we're about resilience, is that communities ask, where were you before and where were you after? And that means in the long term. And one of the things we're playing with and toying with, and I'm really interested in your perspectives on this, is the idea of long-term individual partnerships between corporates and communities, so that resilience is built over the long term and the corporates aren't coming in a rush immediately after the event has happened. And then communities are being overwhelmed, as you've very adequately highlighted, Liz. So keen for your thoughts. Is that an innovative approach that we could adopt?
I probably do have a response to that. I think we could be here for hours to answer that. So let me try and be brief. With corporates, I find, and I think we all, priorities do change and things can morph and shift. But for communities to build resilience, it's going to take 10 years. So the role of intermediaries or not-for-profits or community organisations within that community or connected to that community is super important, because we can stay long-term, or the Community Resilience Centre can stay long-term. The trick of it is to keep open dialogue with corporate, so that when one corporate says, look, we've done 3 years, we can't keep on here, we've got to go and do something else, you're actually able to bring another corporate in and fill that need. Because we shouldn't be putting the burden of managing corporate relationships on communities or not-for-profits. I actually think that's why the good company is great. It's a great company because it actually manages that burden.
But also, I think it is a little bit about being straight with the corporate as well, and that, resilience recovery is not a 2-day job. This is a 10-year thing, and we had a conversation at Pfizer around this, around the bushfires and the floods and so on, and we created a budget line that was, I mean, I don't know when that'll be taken out. So it's, you know, we talked with leaders and we said, this is not a flash in the pan. This is going to take some areas 6, 10, 12 years to recover. We can't just zip in and zip out. We haven't been very successful in getting volunteers into that situation, but it's the same thing with finances. It's not a splatter approach. I'm going to take a last question, and it will be from the back. So hands up if there's a question from the back, please.
Hi,
Hello.
my name is DJ, and my question, I refer back to what Ash said about overhearing the volunteer managers speaking about the oily rag, and it's indeed sad to hear that you know, we still have volunteer managers operating on the smell of an oily rag. We have corporates who operate on the smell of very, very large profits. So is there a way that we can make a connection between the corporate world and volunteer management, where as part of their CSR, not only do they send us their volunteers on a corporate program, but actually look at the organization to see if there's needs and resources that they could fund in the areas of volunteer management?
Yeah, and I think I'm a great proponent for contributing to participate. At the moment, that needs to come at the request of the volunteer involving organisation. But I think as relationships develop, you can open the dialogue to something that's broader than that. To say, oh, well, we might have charged you $75 a person or $100 a person in this occasion, but actually we're moving towards a slightly different model and it looks like this. Let's have a conversation. And with your most trusted partners, I'd suggest experimenting with them.
And
Yeah.
I think, hi DJ. Hello. It is really important for community organizations to be honest about the need for volunteer management and that it should be properly funded. So if you're funded, say you even get a small government grant, there needs to be a line in there for volunteer management because it actually is a really important resource to have in your organization. Use your volunteering peak body to help you advocate for that. But it does take resources to manage volunteers. So that's a good point.
Yeah, I think DJ, great point. We've got on Good Company at the moment, I think 3,000 projects that you can fund. So whether it's you know, a well or a mosquito net or half an hour of cancer research, but in the last 15 years, I don't think I've ever seen a project put up there saying we'd like a funding for our volunteer manager. And this is why, and this is the outcomes, and this is, the virtuous circle that's going to kick off. So I guess, we've created some tools and platforms, and that could be a cool innovation. I'd love to see some organisations putting that up as something that can be funded on the platform.
Right. And
yes, Liz.
Yeah, and just one last thing, we actually, as part of the cost of us being an intermediary, we charge for volunteer management. So I have no qualms asking for the cost of managing the volunteers. And I think the depth of the relationship you can get with a corporate, and Leigh said this before, build that trusted relationship, because then you can come back and have a conversation and say, it doesn't cost us $2,500 to do this. It costs us $25,000 to do this. And if you're in a relationship and you can talk about outcomes and you can measure net promoter scores or the outcome for community, corporates understand that. As Leigh said, they pay for everything. So, be prepared to actually be honest and put your worth on the table.
And can I just say one more thing? I know we're out of time, but don't miss the opportunity to give the most amazing induction you can. The head of the bank could be sitting at your organization, even if not, could be. You just don't know who's sitting there. They are future ambassadors for your organization. Take the time to, tell them what is your cause about. What, who are they helping? What does your organization do? Don't miss that fantastic opportunity, whether it's 10 minutes, whether it's a video, whether you have a person with lived experience, come and sit in front of them.
That's the idea of the session. Absolutely. Nailed it.
Yeah.
That is absolutely key.
Yeah.
Don't miss that opportunity. Yeah, great.
Absolutely. So I hope you have enjoyed hearing from these fabulous speakers about innovation in corporate volunteering. Innovation in the volunteering context comes from necessity, and necessity comes from need. Community has a need, corporations have a need. And what I heard today is that the innovation will come from honesty, it will come from relationship, and it will come from ongoing commitment towards sustainable volunteering practices in the corporate sector. Thank you very much for joining us today, and we hope you have a wonderful afternoon.